أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ ابتلى إبراهيم ربه بكلمات فأتم قال إني جاعلك للناس إماما قال ومن ذريتي قال لا ينال عهد الظالمين وإذ جعلنا البيت مثابة للناس وأمنا واتخذوا من مقام إبراهيم مصلى وعهدنا إلى إبراهيم وإسماعيل أن طهر بيتي للطائفين والعاكفين والركع السجود. صدق الله العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we continue with the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah. Today we'll cover verse 124, inshallah, and maybe the following verse, but probably mainly focus on verse 124. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from all of these weeks now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins a new section, a new subject, if you like, but it's still connected. It's very much connected to the previous verses that we've discussed over the past many months. So from this verse number 124, all the way to up to even verse 134, and few verses beyond that, is turning our attention to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the previous verses, a good section from verse probably 44 or 40 of Surah Baqarah all the way to here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned and listed many of the arguments, many of the proofs, many of the contentions of Bani Israel, of Ahlul Kitab, the Jews and the Christians, and by extension some of the arguments of the mushrikeen, of the polytheists, the Arab polytheists, the Quraysh, who were putting forward arguments why they shouldn't accept the messengership of the Prophet ﷺ, why they shouldn't accept Islam, why they shouldn't accept the Quran as revelation. So all those verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one by one, He mentioned their claims, mentioned their arguments, mentioned their contentions, and He answered them. He gave them proof, He answered one by one, and He showed how most of their contentions and arguments were misguidance and misunderstanding and errors in faith, errors in conceptualizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and errors in understanding the deen, the purpose of the deen. So these were pointed out one by one. And the main focus was really the people of the book, the Bani Israel, the Jews and the Christians, who had these questions or arguments against the Quran or against the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And sometimes the mushrikeen of the Arab also had these issues or wrong understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of these were answered in the previous verses, right? So now the Quran mentions the position and virtues of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring this subject here now? There's a few reasons. The first reason is to turn Allah's attention and our attention, and at the time to turn the attention to the Arabs, to the polytheists, to the mushrikeen of Hijaz, to the Arabs who were idol worshippers mainly. Some of them were perhaps not worshipping idols, but mainly most of them were worshipping idols. So the Arab polytheists, mushrikeen of the Hijaz, the attention is turned towards them. How? Because they it's well known that they are from the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Through Ismail alayhi salam, they have a close connection to Ibrahim alayhi salam. They know genealogically, biologically, they're connected through blood to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So they know this. Secondly, they have great pride that they are the custodians of the Kaaba, of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they also know Ibrahim alayhi salam built this house with his hands. He built this house with his hands. So they claim the link through blood. They're the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam through Ismail alayhi salam. And also they're the custodians of the Kaaba, of the Haram, of this masjid in Mecca. And they know that is from Ibrahim alayhi salam, who built it with his son. So these are the 2 points, and they also take great pride in this, that they are from the family lineage of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the Quran is now going to mention the virtue and position of Ibrahim alayhi salam to address the Arab mushrikeen, to address the Arab polytheists. The second objective of mentioning Ibrahim alayhi salam now, as a new section in the Quran, in this surah, is that the Jews, Bani Israel, they also claim to be his followers. They also recognize Ibrahim as their father, as a prophet, as somebody who is their role model, who they claim they are following. So the second objective is that the Jews also claim close affinity to Ibrahim alayhi salam, that they say he is our father Ibrahim alayhi salam, and that we follow the same deen, the same religion, and we are from him. So the second objective, target audience of this section is Bani Israel. The third objective of this section, of these verses that discuss the virtues and position of Ibrahim alayhi salam, is that preparation now for the Muslims, that the Qibla will be changing. This is preparing the Muslims, preparing the non-Muslims and the other faiths, that this land, Mecca, is blessed. This house, the Baytullah, is blessed. The Kaaba is the blessed house of Allah. So the virtues connected with Ibrahim alayhi salam will be connected to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the coming verses. So it's a preparation to say that this land has been preserved, protected. Mecca has been protected. The house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Kaaba, has been preserved. Why? For the final messenger, for the final ummah, for the final qibla. So this is a preparation. It doesn't announce it now. The announcement of the change of qibla is later on in the surah, but this is a preparation, tamheed, for this change of qibla. It's a huge change, and therefore the change of responsibility of carrying revelation comes to the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are the three key objectives that the Mufassirun say is behind this new subject, new focus on Ibrahim alayhi salam. Before we go into the verse, and probably most of today, because now the time is quite short between now and Isha, most of it will be spent on covering the importance of Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is very important, because the next 10 or so verses discuss Ibrahim alayhi salam and discuss his virtues, his position. So it's important to get a bit of an introduction to Ibrahim alayhi salam and look at what does the Quran tell us about Ibrahim alayhi salam. Most Muslims were very aware of the names of the prophets: Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Dawood, Sulaiman, Yaqub, Yusuf alayhim as-salam jami'an. We're aware of the names, but we're not aware of their significance usually. Many of us, we know Eid al-Adha that just went, and the season of Hajj is connected to Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's all we know. And he made a great sacrifice. That's all we know. But we don't know much beyond that. We don't know his real position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know his real significance and his virtues. So it's important to cover a bit of that before we go into the explanation of the verse, inshallah. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, in terms of history and time, he's placed after Nuh alayhi salam, of course, and sometime before Musa alayhi salam. And obviously he is the actual father of the two great nations, Bani Israel and the Arabs and Muslims. through Ismail alayhi salam, the Arabs, and then the Muslims, and through Ishaq alayhi salam, Bani Israel. Through Ishaq and then Yaqub, you have Bani Israel. So he is the father. And some of them said in the tafsir that his name originally in the original language, which was his name was revealed in, they said it means one or two things. One is the father who is merciful, the generous or the merciful father. And there are traditions in the hadith as well that indicate that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he will be the father for the children who have no parents in Jannah. This is famous description of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that he will be looking after the children in Jannah who have no father. But aside from that, he's also the father of these two great nations, the Muslim Arabs, and obviously even before the Muslims, the Arabs in general, but also Bani Israel. This is without a doubt. Both will call him father, as well as the Christians who come out later from Bani Israel. The Christians as well. All three faiths go back in some lineage, sometimes physical, by religion, by teaching, back to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So that's obviously his position. The Quran mentions Ibrahim alayhi salam in many, many places. I'll only mention 3 places to keep it short. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah number 16, verse 120 to 123. He says, إِنَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ كَانَ أُمَّةً قانتا لله حنيفا ولم يكن من المشركين شاكرا لأنعمه اجتباه وهداه إلى صراط مستقيم وآتيناه في الدنيا حسنة وإنه في الآخرة لمن الصالحين ثم أوحينا إليك أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. Verily Ibrahim was an ummah. Inna Ibrahima kana ummah. Verily Ibrahim was an ummah, obedient to Allah, Hanif. And he was not one of those who were from the polytheists. He didn't do shirk. He wasn't from the mushrikeen. He was thankful for Allah's favors of his ni'mah. Allah chose him. He chose him and guided him to the sirat al-mustaqim, the straight path. And we gave him good in this world, and in the hereafter he shall be of the righteous. Then we have sent the revelation to you, O Muhammad, meaning speaking to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, ittabi' millata Ibrahim, follow the way, the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was Hanif, and he was not of the mushrikeen. So a couple of qualities here. Number one, and I'll come to the main qualities of Ibrahim alayhi salam after we discuss these verses. It's very clear, Inna Ibrahim kana ummah. One person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him as a nation, as an ummah, because of his steadfastness, because of his sacrifice, because of his tawheed, strength of faith, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from him comes, the ummah of Bani Israel, the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ultimately, we come from there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that he was obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qanitan lillah. Hanifa. Hanif is the one who turns away from falsehood to the truth, always inclining towards the truth, towards the haqq, turning away from falsehood. This is Ibrahim alayhi salam. And he was not of the mushrikeen. Shakiran, he was grateful, always showed gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his blessings and favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he chose him and guided him to the straight path. And Allah says we gave him in the dunya hasana, we gave him many, many good things, and in the akhirah he will be of the righteous, the people of the righteous. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ. Then we revealed to you, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to follow his millah. Millah means It's usually translated as religion, but it's a bit more than that. Millah means the entire way, a way of life is millah, right? The way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is commanded to follow the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in another place, the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are also commanded to follow the millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So this is his position. Ibrahim alayhi salam is a role model for everybody. We and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is command. Yes, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with the final Sharia, without a doubt, the final laws, the final Quran, the final revelation. And in the story of the Mi'raj and Isra, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam led all of the prophets in Salah. He is the best of messengers. He is the Imam of the Mursaleen, without a doubt. But still, no other prophet did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ittabi' millatahu. He didn't say that to anyone. He said, ittabi' millata Ibrahim. Millata Ibrahim. The only prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our prophet, and ourselves as an ummah to follow is Ibrahim alayhi salam. So obviously it's not commanding us to follow all of his sharia in that sense, in terms of details of laws which may have been slightly different for his time. What is it asking us to follow? It's asking us to follow something different, which I'll explain a bit later. It's not just the rules, it's the whole spirit, the real meaning of submission, the real meaning of deen. Another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah number 6, verse 161, قُلْ إِنَّنِي هَدَانِي رَبِّي إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ دِينًا قِيَمًا مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And this وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ comes so many times with Ibrahim alayhi salam, that he was Hanif and he was not of the mushrikeen. This is a repeated quality of Ibrahim alayhi salam that's always mentioned in the Quran. So again here, Allah is saying to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say, truly my Lord has guided me to a straight path, a right religion, dinan qiyaman, the religion of Ibrahim. Again, pointing towards that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is following the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Hanifan, again, turning away from falsehood, turning to the truth, the haqq. And he was not of the mushrikeen, as we mentioned again. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين إن أولى الناس بإبراهيم للذين اتبعوه وهذا النبي والذين آمنوا والله ولي المؤمنين. That Ibrahim alayhi salam was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but he was a true Muslim, Hanifan, and he was not of the mushrikeen. Verily among mankind who have the best claim to Ibrahim are those who followed him, and this prophet, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who have believed, the Muslims. And Allah is the wali of the believers, meaning the protector and the helper. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that, first of all, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was neither Jew nor Christian, because the Torah came after Ibrahim alayhi salam. It didn't come to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the followers who say they're from Bani Israel is after Ibrahim alayhi salam. He was neither Jew nor Christian. He was someone who submitted. He was a Muslim, someone who submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was, as it says here, كان حنيفا مسلما. He was Hanif and Muslim. He was the one who is turning away from falsehood, always turning towards the truth. And Muslim, the one who submits to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. He was not of those who associated. And this is repeated again and again. Why? Because we know that the Christians, in their belief at a certain point, it ended up in shirk. It ended up in shirk, the Trinity or the Son of God, etc. So again and again the Quran points this out. You claim he's you follow his deen, but he was not of the mushrikeen. He was not of those who associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he also says that إِنَّ أَوْلَى النَّاسِ بِإِبْرَاهِيمَ لَلَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ. The ones who have more claim to Ibrahim alayhi salam, the ones that are closest to him, the ones who have a more right over claiming Ibrahim alayhi salam are who? Group number one are those who followed him, meaning those who followed Ibrahim alayhi salam at his time when he was alive. Those who followed him, and in every generation, whoever followed Ibrahim alayhi salam, they are the closest to Ibrahim. Not simply because you are Christian or Jew, automatically you claim that you're following Ibrahim alayhi salam. No. Number one, those who actually followed his practice, his faith. Number two, هذا النبي Muhammad sallallahu alayhi salam. He is closer, he has more of a claim to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Why? Because he's following in his footsteps. He's following in the tawheed of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's following in the submission of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's coming from the same source. And those who believe, meaning the Muslims, those who believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have a greater claim to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So again, you see in these three verses that Ibrahim alayhi salam is set out as a role model, as an exemplar in faith, etc., etc. But why is he a role model? Why is he given such a position in the Quran? What is it that made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put Ibrahim alayhi salam above everybody as a role model? There are a number of reasons. The first one is the way Ibrahim alayhi salam used his mind. He was using his mind to reach the truth. He was thinking. He wasn't blindly following whatever his culture or family or community was doing. As you know, he was born into a community where polytheism was the dominant culture, was the religion. Shirk, worshipping idols. His family were manufacturing idols. They were sculpturing and creating, making idols and selling idols. His family was deeply entrenched in shirk. He was born in that time when the whole community were deeply entrenched in shirk. His family were involved in the actual making of idols. So he used his mind, he used his intellect, his thinking, his ration to think, to lead him to the truth. So this is number one. And this is similar to the Prophet ﷺ. When he was born in Mecca, surrounding him was what? The Kaaba was full of idols. The religion of the day was shirk, was of the mushrikeen, those who were committing shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Prophet ﷺ used to go to the cave. Why? To reflect and contemplate, to think about the nature of the truth of this world, of the existence of this world, to reflect and contemplate there. Why? He's using his mind. He's not simply following what the whole society is doing. He's not following the whole community. It's not making sense to him. There's something more to the meaning of this life. There must be something in terms of the truth of this existence. This is what Ibrahim alayhi salam did. This is what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi salam, he did too. The second quality that made him the role model is tawheed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps on mentioning وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. His tawheed, worshipping one Allah subhanahu. And tawheed is a big subject. You can run weeks of sessions on tawheed. But basically, not to just say Allah is one, that's tawheed, yes. But to live your life and act as though Allah is one, this is different. First of all, to have full certain yaqeen. If you don't have that yaqeen, Ibrahim alayhi salam couldn't do what he did. But tawheed is to live your life acting and behaving and making decisions that you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who gives rizq. That is tawheed. When you know the rizq comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't come from the hands of other people. When you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of the whole affairs of the world. When you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can punish and He can have mercy. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can guide. No one else can take me to Jannah. Nobody else can take me to the hellfire. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who can take me to Jannah. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who can punish me for my deeds. This is the deep tawheed that we need to know that all worship belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's not just the physical worship of salah and saum and hajj, but where is my heart attached to? Where is my reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who do I rely on? Am I constantly seeking the support, the people approving of me? Am I relying on other created beings? Or am I relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where is my priority? Is it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the dunya? Where is my priority? This is all to do with tawheed. Am I putting the hereafter over the dunya? This is all to do with tawheed. The third thing is turning away from temporary things. This is the quality of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Inni la uhibbul afilin. I do not like that which sets. When he was given the example of the stars, this is my Lord, then the stars set, then the moon, then the sun. The thing he says is that I do not like those things that set. I don't have love for those things which are temporary. So he turns away from those things that are temporary, that are fleeting, that come and go. But our hearts are attached to the dunya, which is temporary. The life of this world, which is temporary, we're attached to it. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, his was about turning away from temporary things. The fourth thing is reliance, tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his sacrifice. We know about his leaving his wife and Ismail as an infant in the desert of Mecca, where there's no structures, no buildings, no homes, no water, no food. This is the greatest test of tawakkul you can have. This is what Ibrahim alayhi salam he had. And sacrifice, we know about the sacrifice he was willing to do for his son, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to sacrifice his son. That just these two things, nobody could possibly be able to or prepared or have even an imagination how to do that sacrifice. His own son and to leave his wife and infant in the desert. Just pure reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pure reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the fourth quality of Ibrahim alayhi salam that made him the role model, made him the ummah, made him the person that we need to follow. The fifth one is submission, Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, and you'll see in the verses that are coming up, that he uses the word Islam for Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's the one who submitted. He's the one who was tested and submitted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that he was Muslim. He calls him Muslim. He calls him Muslim directly. So Ibrahim alayhi salam submitted to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout his life in all of these tests, whether he was about to be burnt by the fire, whether leaving his family in Mecca, whether sacrificing his son. This is Islam. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the scene when Ibrahim alayhi salam, just before he was about to slaughter his son, he is about to do it, and then Allah says فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ, when both of them submitted, same from Islam, when they submitted to my command, he was about to sacrifice him, and Ismail alayhi salam agreed to be sacrificed. When both of them submitted, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called out and rescued him. So his fifth quality is submission, proper submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His sixth quality is sticking with the faith, even if you're alone. This is Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's called an ummah because he's alone. He's on his own, he was strong in his faith. Even if people around you are not practicing, if people around you are ridiculing you, they're not following you, they're not listening to you, they're not accepting your da'wah, you're in a strange land, people can often forget and give up their faith. But Ibrahim alayhi salam steadfast, sticking to his faith. And lastly, these are some of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to follow Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the important thing here is that you'll realize there are no laws here. Allah didn't say follow Ibrahim alayhi salam in this fiqh ruling. or in this law. He didn't say that. He said, follow millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Meaning the deen and the way is about the principles and the qualities. Follow him in his tawakkul, in his reliance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Follow him in his tawheed, in his certainty, in his yaqeen of faith. Follow him in his insight through which he sees beyond the veils of the dunya, beyond the physical material. Follow him in his sacrifice, right? His readiness to do sacrifice. What are we prepared to sacrifice for this deen? Follow him in his submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Islam. So it's about the state of your heart, it's about your principles, it's about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Follow him in these qualities. Now ta'ala is telling us, the deen is not always about the rules. Yes, the rules are there. The law, that's what the deen stands on. But the foundation, the usul of the deen are these things. Tawakkul, the reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, preparing for the hereafter, with yaqeen, knowing that the hereafter is coming, knowing that I will be standing on the day of judgment, knowing for certain that death is imminent, knowing for certain that this dunya and all of its glory and wealth and fame and fleeting enjoyment is temporary, it will not last, is fleeting, it's coming and is going. Having that certainty, these are the usul of the deen. Having that fear in the heart of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having that love to look forward for the day of judgment, to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The love for Jannah, the fear for the hellfire. Crying at night, sacrificing, submitting. This is what the usul of the deen is. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us by bringing the role model of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So let's go to the verse now, quickly say a few words, and we'll continue inshallah next week. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنْ. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tried and tested Ibrahim alayhi salam with what? Kalimatin. فَأَتَمَّهُنْ. He fulfilled it. What does this mean? What does kalimat mean? Kalimat literally means words. So if you literally translated it, it would be when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested alayhi salam with words. What the Mufassirin say here is basically al-amr wal-nahi, or some rules or tests, some specific tests he gave Ibrahim alayhi salam, or some specific commands he gave Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he fulfilled those. He fulfilled those. When he fulfilled those, he submitted. قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares that indeed, for sure, certainly, I'm going to make you for mankind or for the people an imam. I'm going to make you their leader. I'm going to make you their imam. The people said imam here means two things: leader and prophet. Leader and prophet. Messenger and leader. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam says, قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he hears this good news that he's being made an imam, he quickly makes dua or requests, and from my offsprings. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds that لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. That my covenant, my promise or my covenant does not does not take in the wrongdoers, the oppressors, the zalimin, which means some of his offsprings, from amongst them will come people who are rebellious against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people who are wrongdoers, oppressors. So it doesn't cover them. They will not be imams, they will not be messengers, they will not be leaders. My covenant, my promise only covers those who are righteous, those who have faith and submit fully. So here again you can see the beginning. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ. Ibtila is to be tested, to be tried. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْمَوْتَ موت والحياة إلا ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. في البداية هو الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبليكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He is the one who has created death and life to test. The same word, ليبليكم. Huh? ليبلوكم. To test you, to test which one of you is best in action. Right? So it's the same word, bala, ibtila. It's the same word, is test. Which one of you is the best in action? He didn't say which one of you is the most in action, quality of action. Which one of you is ahsan, best in action, in quality. So here, with the test, this is the life of the believer. Ibrahim alayhi salam was tested, he's made an imam, he's made a leader, he's made a prophet. The Muslims, the believers are tested. This is our life. We are tested. If we pass the test, if we submit, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this community also leaders, imams. This is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our situation today is weakness, is division, is humiliation, is degradation throughout the earth. We have lost leadership, we have lost imamah. Why? Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested this nation, we have failed. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested us in the latter portion of our history, then as an ummah we have failed. That's why His ahd is not going to be for the zalimin, the oppressors, those who do wrong, those who rebel against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who forsake His rules, His sharia, those who move away from the Quran, those who move away from the sunnah, those who stop praying, stop fasting, adopt other ways of life as guidance. You will be humiliated. You will not be leaders. If you want leadership, if you want strength, if you want return to power on the earth, and that's not the main objective of Islam, by the way. This is a side thing. That's not the main objective. Allah didn't send us here for the primary goal of ruling the earth. That's not the only objective. The main objective is to be tested and to submit. فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ. To submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He tests us. This is the main objective. Isa alayhi salam's followers, immediately they didn't gain power. They didn't become rulers of the world. But they were successful. Why? Because those who followed him submitted. They passed the test. Main thing is to submit, ubudiyya, servitude, slavehood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the main purpose. But alongside, as a side effect, if we do that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may give you the gift of tamkeen, establish you on the earth. He may give you leadership. He may give you power on the earth. He may give you izzah, dignity as an ummah. But the first thing has to be the submission, the ubudiyya, the servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Implementing Islam in our lives, individually, as families, as communities. Without that, you will not be given leadership. And that's why in Islam, even in our daily lives, wherever we are, whether we're in a masjid, in an organization, or even in a Muslim society, when we choose leadership, there is a lesson here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give leadership to zalimun. But in the Muslim countries, mostly we do the opposite. The one who's the most corrupt, the most rebellious, the one who's openly against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we all vote for him. Or sometimes we don't vote, he votes himself in, but we accept him. But this is completely against the principles of how Muslims should select their leaders. Not just in a society, anywhere, in a jama'ah, in a masjid, to make someone imam, to make someone the head of a large organization, or to give somebody responsibility. We should also select by competence, yes, but also their practice of Islam as well, their fear of Allah, their righteousness, their piety. These must be also qualities. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He completed that and He said He'll make him imam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, and look at the desire of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He could have said, Alhamdulillah, Allah's going to make me imam, khalas. No, his concern is for his offspring, his next generations, those who come after. His concern is there. I want to bring them as well, make them under this covenant, make them also leaders, make them also imams, send also prophets amongst them. But here, Allah says He doesn't cover the zalimun, but in another place, Ibrahim alayhi salam makes the dua, which results in sending of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam to this ummah. And even before Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent many hundreds of messengers amongst the offspring of Ibrahim alayhi salam, particularly to Bani Israel. They said there were periods in Bani Israel's history, they're never without a prophet. One dies, another one comes. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 in the same time. They, one after another, they always had prophets amongst them. So many prophets were sent amongst the offspring of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's the one who made the dua, رَبَّنَا وَابْعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ, that, oh Allah, send amongst them a messenger from them. This is talking about the people when he's making the dua after building the Kaaba. So he's talking about the nation that comes after through Ismail alayhi salam. He makes that dua, and after 2,500, maybe 3,000 years, that dua is fulfilled by the sending of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he describes not just sending, he says send them a messenger who will do what? يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ. He will recite unto them your signs, meaning recite the Quran, the ayahs. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. He will teach them the book and wisdom, and He will purify them. And He says that you are all powerful, all wise. You know, you are able to do this. You know, you are all knowing and all wise. So this is the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We are so connected with Ibrahim alayhi salam. The Hajj is connected. The dua for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come to this nation is connected. There's so many things connected with Ibrahim alayhi salam and Islam, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings him as a figure who is to be followed, we should learn about him, we should follow his principles, his sacrifice, his attitude towards submission, the way he submitted, the way he was relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, we'll carry on with the next verses next week, inshallah. So the next section, few weeks, will be about Ibrahim alayhi salam. The dua I just mentioned is also there in verse 129. That will also come. So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq, inshallah. If there are any quick questions before we close, we can take any quick questions if there are. No? One other point, hopefully, I don't know if there...
What was the language of the Torah?
Good question. What was the language of the Torah? They say, some people say it was Hebrew or Aramaic. Aramaic is another, or there's another language, Syrianic or something, Assyrianic. I'm not 100% sure. One of these two, either Aramaic or Hebrew. I'm not 100% sure.
What the point you want to say, Sheikh?
That was one of the point. If you the Torah is you got the current day Bible. It's not the whole Bible, and it's not the whole of Old Testament. The Old Testament,
15 minutes.
yeah, the Old Testament has 3 parts, and one part is the Torah, according to what they believe. They say one part of that is the Torah.
Is there anything called Tibrani?
Ibrani.
Yeah.
Ibrani is a language, I think.
Just someone just explained me about the Torah by the Tibrani. I just want to make sure.
I'm not sure. Allahu A'lam. But one of the things you should all pick up, just have a look at the Old Testament. You will be probably shocked and surprised, but you will also, Yaqub alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, all of the prophets, the way they're described in the Old Testament and the way they're described in the Quran is night and day difference. Day and night difference. in the Old Testament, and this is not criticizing anything, this is their scholars also tell you that they're like normal human beings. They sin, they trick, they make mistakes, they get drunk, they do this, they do that. It's all there. Compare that to how the prophets are presented in the Quran is a day and night difference. Day and night difference. So it's useful just to have a look at that. And there are, obviously, we say that we don't reject any of the other books and we don't affirm it. We don't know which part is still authentic and original and which part isn't. So that's what it is with the Torah. Yeah.
Can you say where in the Bible that it does mention? I know it mentions. Well, I was told that it mentions in the Bible that the Prophet Muhammad will come. Can do you know with the top of mind the reference? I'm
You have to listen to Zakir Naik or Ahmed Didat. I don't know the Bible at all, to be honest. But they always quote it. Probably something like, they quote it John or something. But usually the verse that he quotes where Isa alayhi salam says that there will be someone coming after me. They say it's a spirit, but they say he will not speak of his own. Whatever he speaks will be words of God, revealed. It will be inspired. So they say this is referring to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam very clearly. I think there's at least still in today's Bible, other scholars of comparative religion, they give at least 2-3 references even from today's Bible or even more. Yeah.
So just something real quick. How they follow like style of David since so Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, they're not Jewish, they're not Christian, they're not even from Banu Israel. How they claim they are coming from Dawood alayhi salam?
I don't know how they claim that.
You know, like the Banu Israel في فلسطين يقولون they.
Did you say they are not from Bani Israel?
They are. They see them as they are from Bani Israel. Yeah.
How come? Because Ibrahim after Sulaiman in no?
No. They come after Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Did they come after Musa?
No, I don't know about Musa alayhi salam, but Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, all of them come after Ibrahim alayhi salam. They come all after Ibrahim alayhi salam.
كيف أستاذ إذا إبراهيم عليه السلام بعدين إسحاق إسحاق بعد إسحاق إجا من إسحاق إجا يعقوب ومن بعد يعقوب إجا يوسف ومن بعد يوسف إجا موسى.
Not straight away. Between Yusuf alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, big gap.
But Musa directly he came in Egypt following the brother of the king of Egypt in the history.
Yeah. Fir'aun.
Yeah, but he didn't come in Sulaiman and Dawood in that time.
Wallahu alam. Maybe. As we need to check. Huh?
There's a big gap between them.
Yeah, there's a big gap.
حكم داود حكم سليمان قبل هذا
قبل إبراهيم عليه السلام.
دفنا شيخ لأنه إذا أنت كيف لأنه إبراهيم عليه السلام ومن إبراهيم إجا إسحاق وإسماعيل وبعدين من إسحاق إجا من بعد إسحاق الله بشر إسحاق ومن بعده يعقوب من بعد يعقوب
يوسف عليه السلام.
يوسف عليه السلام عاش في مصر ومن بعده إجا موسى والله أمر موسى أن يأخذ جسد يوسف.
لكن من بعده become how much.
أيوب عليه الصلاة والسلام then Shu'aib then موسى عليه السلام.
Yeah, but there have no gaps between there no Dawood and Sulaiman بهذا المكان هم قبل إبراهيم عليه السلام.
I don't think so. Allah
Then came Harun عليه الصلاة والسلام.
Yeah, that's we're talking about after Ibrahim. We're talking before.
We have to check inshallah. I don't think they came before Ibrahim alayhi salam. We'll check inshallah next week. We'll give answer
I've got the
inshallah.
list of them on the internet here. So
Is that in order?
well, I downloaded it from the internet, so.
Yeah, it says Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman is well after. Yeah, because if they came before, the Bani Israel would not see them as prophets. If they came before Ibrahim alayhi salam, because they only follow mainly after Yaqub alayhi salam, because Yaqub alayhi salam's other name is Israel. Yeah.
جزاك الله خير.
السلام عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum.